So busy since morning.
Yeah, so just started it now.
Yes, you can start, Mahinda, please.
So should we start?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so greetings everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you are enjoying learning while staying at home. Since morning, we are having lots of fabulous sessions, and I'm just going to add my session today where I will be discussing about the Azure function and how to utilize Azure function for Dynamics 365. So let's have a quick introduction. So I am principal consultant at Himbap. We do lots of consulting and training for Dynamics, and it's more than 12 years I've been working with Dynamics CRM. And I started working with Dynamics CRM since when 3.0 was there in the market. And I'm former 7-time Microsoft MVP, and currently I'm 5 times MVP from C# Corner community. And I have authored 3 books for Dynamic CRM and 365. One of my book recently got published, which is for implementing Dynamics 365 for customer engagement. And you can reach me through different channels that I have on my screen. So if you have any question, or if I will try to answer your question here in the session itself. But if you have any follow-up question, you can always connect me with these channels. So today, I'm going to discuss these 3 topics. So here I will start with the common requirements that every CRM technical, faces sooner or later while working with the CRM, based on that implementation. So it can be you start getting these kind of requirement very early in your career, or maybe you will start getting this later on when you will reach on get some more experience, right? And then we will discuss about what are the common solutions that from the CRM technical person point of view, what is the first common solution that comes in the mind when we talk about these kind of requirements. And then we will discuss about the Azure function, and I will show you a quick demo on how to use Azure function, how to deploy them, and how to create them. So let's discuss about the common requirement first, and I want to make this session interactive, and I want to make sure that everybody is sharing their experience when they got this kind of requirement, what was their solution, and how they solved this particular business problem. This will help all the members to learn if they have not used that solution before. So it will be a good experience sharing opportunity with everyone. So please feel free to the first requirement is the scheduler. So this is the very common requirement nowadays, that we want to implement the scheduler in Dynamics 365. And when we are discussing about these requirements, as I said, like there are different options to solve them. And now basically we have a broader technology set which is working around the Dynamics 365. So we have a bigger ecosystem there. So now we have more options to solve that issues, but earlier we had very few options. So how many of you got a scheduler kind of requirement where you need to implement a scheduler? This could be a, sending emails on a particular schedule, or, running some batch update on specified schedule. So just feel free to unmute yourself and just share your experience, what solution you implemented when you got this kind of requirement. Anybody wanted to share his experience?
Um,
I had a similar requirement, but I used actually third-party integration software, something like TIBCO Scribe,
Mm-hmm.
to basically have like run it on a schedule with
Okay.
like Windows task.
Okay. Okay. Yep. So that's
Yeah,
also like
and
I
one thing.
also have a
Yeah.
same kind of requirement. In one project, we implemented as a means flows scheduler,
Mm-hmm.
and in other project we implemented means we wrote custom exe and that we scheduled on the web jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of scheduler we used.
Okay.
Hey, Minder, we have two different on the chat as well, like timeout on workflow, and there is one like we use task scheduler.
Yep. Yep. So we do have like out of the box in CRM as well. Like we can use the, traditional workflow, right? We do have that, timeout and wait conditions there, which we can use. And, sometimes we use other options as well. For example, we use sometimes, bulk deletion to schedule something and, run that workflow. So that's also the common requirement, common solution that is used. So, okay. So this, there one's, the requirement that another requirement is commonly here, the data updates. Okay. So where we wanted to update, lots of data in Dynamics. So it may be that, let's say, for example, we have a parent record and then we have thousands of child records, or maybe there are thousands of related entity in the same hierarchy. And we want to, when something is done on the parent record, we want to update all this child records or all that record which is, on that hierarchy. So that kind of thing is also very common, you know so what is anybody got this kind of requirement? And if that, what solution you guys used?
Yes, Mr. Vivek here. Actually, we got similar kind of requirement and we have implemented it using the flow, the Power Automate.
Hmm.
So we had a requirement on field service like if anything updated on work order, the related bookings would be updated, updated status.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else want to share his experience?
We had a request where, but we were actually doing it with a manual trigger. It was not necessarily automated. So,
Yeah,
but
no,
we just
I'm
wrote a
I'm not I'm not
plugin.
I'm not talking about specifically like how and you done it from that Azure or some automated way. I just want to hear like your experience on that, how you guys sold it, and so that everybody know that yes, we have that option. If sometime it totally depends on which solution you select. There are different
Right.
criteria, right? So but still, if we have somebody have the same criteria, so they can use this solution at that moment. So that's why I'm asking, like you can share your experience which can help other community member as well, right?
We just use a combination of basically custom workflows and plugins,
Mm-hmm.
to be short.
Okay.
That's what we
Okay.
did.
Okay.
Hey,
Okay. Good.
we have a few on chat as well, like build custom API, create the booking slot based on resource availability from third-party system, and
Mm-hmm.
then there is SQL Server replication or jobs.
Okay. Okay. That's good. So now that other requirement, this is like apart from this, is that when we want to transfer the data from CRM to other system, right? So it can be a legacy system, it can be a ERP system, or any other, you know, database where you want to transfer data from CRM. So it based on some trigger or maybe some schedule. So that kind of requirement is also common, right? When we are working on any implementation. So these type of requirement also common for us, right? So the next one is that, like custom services, like integrating with the custom services. So we want to utilize some of the services, maybe we want to fetch some data from there. So for example, let's say you are working on the automobile in implementation, and there maybe based on that car number, you want to get detail of the car, so those kind of requirement, or maybe there is some address verification you want to do, right? So those kind of also requirement that we have, where we need to think about, going beyond that boundary of dynamic CRM, right? And I
Hey,
said, like,
fine. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have a question.
yeah,
So,
please.
is this bi-directional communication updates?
Well, this is one direction here. Like we are when we are getting data from outside and just keeping updating some data in CRM. So
I hope your question is answered, Dikumar.
yeah. So
Okay, thank you.
these are the just typical scenario, right? I'm discussing here. So a typical requirement that we used to have. So I'm just talking about here that one way integration, but it can be two-way integration as well. So depending on the scenario, as I said. And the another one is accessing the file system, right? So for example, if you want to import some data into Dynamics, we can utilize that out of the box import utility, and we do have other things where you can use that SSIS integration toolkits, and there are different other ways we can import the data in CRM as well, right? So these but now as I said, like now we have the bigger ecosystem, and we have Power Automate, right, where we can use that to bring the files into dynamic CRM based on some criteria, or based on some schedule or something like that, right? So these are the very common requirement that we need to think about going beyond that CRM boundaries. But apart from these common requirement, do you guys faced anytime any requirement where you need to think like, no, Dynamics cannot do that, I need to go beyond the boundary of Dynamics in a high level?
Well, I mean, when it comes to data updates and things like that, and even data migration, if we're talking about that, then whatever is there out of the box for Dynamics, it's not necessarily, the most convenient way to do it. So that's one of the things that we often end up doing using a third party tool.
Yeah. Okay. So
Also, Mahinder,
mhm.
Shailesh,
Yeah.
we are
Hi.
calling the webhooks by using Azure Functions
Mhm,
when
mhm,
our CRM is connecting to the accounting system.
mhm, mhm.
It's like invoice transferring.
Yeah, yeah. So if in a high level, if you will say that these are the 6 point which kind of summarize that requirements where we need to think about going beyond the boundaries of Dynamics. Of course, we can do some of the things out of the box, but there are limitations for doing that, and we have to extend the capability of Dynamics as well, right? So that's the thing here. Now, so let's take about that, what is the common solution that we always think? And I just want to, give this opportunity to everyone when they started their career in Dynamics. Maybe they just started directly on the Dynamics, or they came from different platform, maybe from the .NET, you know, when they got this kind of requirement, like, where we discussed this scenario in the previous slide, those kind of requirement, and the quick idea that came into your mind, what was the solution that you thought about? I'm talking about the within the Dynamics. And specifically, I'm asking, like, when you just started working with Dynamics, like in a very early stage of your experience or in your career.
So I would like to add Mahinder here, if
Yeah,
it's okay.
yeah, please.
And normally I've not shared this with community, but we all start somewhere, right? So my
Yes,
first half a year in the career was .NET, so I was
yes,
okay with it. And many
yes,
of us start from .NET as a technical person.
yes,
I
yes,
was given a I was given a set of ASP.NET MVC Razor based site, and this was within the context of Microsoft. I was a Microsoft employee back then, and
yes,
there's no documentation, nothing, and I had to integrate this to Dynamics, and this was a volunteer screening site for US. So the
yes,
integration part I did fine, but when it came to the handling the requirement within the Dynamics CRM, and this was back in, I think, yeah, 4.0 version, right?
yes, yes,
4.0 to 2011 upgrade scenario, along with adding a site like this. So I added writing a lot of event handlers, which I called plugins, and
Yeah.
I was directly calling lot of stored procedures, which were
Yeah.
sitting in the Dynamics database, right? I was
Yeah.
not aware.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did complete requirements, but you know, the instant idea typically that comes to us is okay, this is similar to event handler, and these are the kinds of things we are trying to do, and then
Yes.
just quickly go and start accessing database, right? That was the
Yes.
start to things. Of course, over
Yes.
time, you learn.
Yes, yes, that's true, Dipesh. Like that's true, and that's with I think most of that Dynamics consultant came from .NET. If you'll say if you'll look for that how much percentage, I'm sure that more percentage you will get from that the person or that technical people coming from the .NET. Even I started working with Microsoft technology with the VB6, and after that I moved to .NET for some time, and then I jumped into the Dynamics CRM. So I remember my first project which I did for Dynamics CRM 3.0, that that was creating a duplicate detection, because that over there that time duplicate detection feature was not there. So we built a custom web application, and through that we were doing the duplicate detection there. So that kind of thing. So that's there. So but I'm here now, like very common solution that comes in mind while we are working with Dynamics, and especially I mean this was when I was there, this was the first idea. I'm talking about from Dynamics, when the control, the capability of Dynamics. The superhero that always comes to mind is plugins, right? Most of the time when we see that requirement and we know that in the plugin that okay, we can do this in plugin. So whatever we want to do, like we want to integrate with other application, we want to do the things like, and especially I'm talking about like when we started working from the on-prem. In on-prem we don't have that much restrictions that we have now in the cloud, right? But now the things have changed. Microsoft have their cloud first strategy, where plugin have a very limited capabilities. Look,
Some of you, somebody between this attendees is not on mute. Kindly mute yourself.
yeah. Okay. So yeah, so I'm sure that you all will be agree with this, that the first superhero that comes into mind from the Dynamics is the plugins, right? And the next thing is like the problem is with the plugin is like definitely like plugin can do most of the things, and but it has its own limitation, and the biggest limitation that we have in the plugin is timeout, right? It has its own capability. It has to complete its processing within 2 minutes, right? So whenever you are writing a plugin, and or we are sometime I when discussing some scenario with the other consultants, they think that that workflow don't have this kind of limitation. So when they are writing custom workflow, they there is no limitation of 2 minutes kind of thing. So but that's not true. Whatever you are writing here is have the 2 minute timeout limit, right? And I'm sure that everybody have faced this kind of issue when they are working with the plugin sometime, and specifically for those requirement which you discussed earlier, right? So is there anybody who faced the timeout and they did something and they were able to overcome this situation? Is there anybody who did that? Do you want to share your experience that you were able to resolve the timeout limitation and you were able to do that whatever you want to work? I can see somebody here. Okay, nobody want to share their experience? Okay, so no worries. So now the first thing that we discuss like the timeout. The other thing is that we have that dependency assembly dependencies. So when we want to utilize some other assemblies, that in the sandbox plugin, it's not easy to use the other assemblies. We need to merge them, and then we need to use the il merge, and that's also not a very good way of doing that. So in simpler manner, we can say that this is also a limitation that we have in the plugins, and specifically for the sandbox plugin. So whenever I'm talking about the limitation, I'm talking about the cloud you know plugins, the sandbox plugin that we do.
Hey Mahinder, we have something
Yeah,
on the chat. So someone says many times when we want to assign large number of child
yeah,
records based on parent record,
yeah,
then parental behavior for large number of records. So
yeah.
Parag, if you want to share something else, maybe you can unmute your mic and go ahead.
Right, right. So we know that we have the parental behavior, but when there are large number of child records we wanted to assign, or probably whatever we wanted to do based on the parental action. So similar, when we write a plugin to assign for some other behavior, it gets timeouts based on the large number of records. So we then need to split and divide into jobs, and then probably we need to think of the custom solutions considering the limitations of the plugin of timeout.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. Yep, that's true. Yeah. So the other limitation that I said, like, is that file system. So if you want to access the file system, the network system, so we cannot use that plugin on that. So we need to think about, like, going beyond the boundary of Dynamics. Okay. So keeping those things in mind, as I said, like, now we have much more options that we can utilize based on the requirement. You can go with a different solution, but today I'm going to concentrate on that Azure function. you know we faced some issues, and I solved those issues using the Azure function, and that's what I want to share with you guys. Yep. So let's talk about the Azure function. So which is basically here. I just want to have a quick introduction about that Azure function. So I'm sure that everybody is aware of the Azure function, but still we have that lots of folks who are not uh, worked with the Azure function earlier. So I'm just having a quick introduction about that, and so that to give you an idea that what is Azure function and where it can fit, uh, based on our requirement, and can solve our issues that you normally face with the plugin, right? So first thing is that the first feature of this Azure function is it's serverless. You don't need to think about setting up any kind of infrastructure. You can utilize that Microsoft Azure compute platform, the cloud platform, and you can use that basically for, you can concentrate on your code, and you can just think about what is the logic that you need to implement, and how you are going to deal with the data, right? So that is the two things that you need to concentrate. And then finally we have the Azure function which can solve your issues. So main thing is the code and the data. You don't need to think about, do I need to set up the server or something like that. So like we discussed earlier, that when earlier working with the on-prem, and sometime I have seen that in case of cloud CRM as well, when we want to do some kind of long running job or want to update some data, we somewhere one thought that comes in the mind is to use the Windows scheduler, and to use the Windows services, that somehow we can schedule it and do our requirement, fulfill our requirement, right? So that's the thing here. But again, if you want to go for that, we need to think about that, what is the server, and we need to get that infrastructure where we can run our Windows service, right? But here we don't need to bother about that, and we can just concentrate on our logic. Development choice. So in the Azure function, we have different options that we can use to develop that code. So depending on that, your choice, and depending on the resources that is available to you, you can use them. So the first thing is the Visual Studio. That's very common when we want to write any extensions for Dynamics CRM. So we use the Visual Studio, and we have the Visual Studio templates for Azure functions which we can use. And this is very much helpful when you are writing that Azure function through the Visual Studio. You can easily troubleshoot it, you can easily debug it. Okay, you can just check that if there is any issue in the code, and you can fix it without, within that Visual Studio only, before deploying your solution to Azure portal, right? And another option that we have, that we can also write that code for the Azure function from that Azure portal. So there is a editor available there. Say, like, you can go there and you can simply write the code there, but you need to keep in mind this is kind of a text editor that which won't provide you any kind of intelligence, or you won't get much help from there. You need to write that code, and just like it's kind of writing that web application code in the text file or the notepad, and then save it like we used to do when .NET came into the picture in the starting, right? So those kind of things that is there in the Azure portal. And then we have another choice, like we can use that code as well, the Microsoft code, that here as well this can be utilized for that Azure functions if you want to write that. So there is a different requirements that we have. Based on the requirement, we have different choices that you can use. The next one is the event. So we have different events available, right, which we can utilize, like one of the consultants shared his experience that they are using already that webhook to implement their requirement. So similarly, we can use the timer scheduler, we can use the queue trigger, we can use the blob trigger, service bus trigger. So there are different events are available which can be utilized based on the requirement, what requirement you have, right? So for example, if something like, let's say for example, if you are working on some plugin and you want to run some long update, or want to do your logic triggered through the plugin only, then you can utilize the webhook, right? Where your webhook resides in the Azure portal, and then you can initiate it from the portal. So when you will go to the Visual Studio and you will start writing the Azure function, you will see different options that we have. You can see here we have different options that you can use, right, to design the function. And similarly, if you are writing that function from the Azure portal, there as well you will get the different templates which you can utilize to write your Azure function depending on the event, right? Sorry. Now, language support, that most of the people will write the code using C#, but we do have different supports here, like we can use different languages options depending on the version. So there is a dependency on that Azure function version. So you can see here that we have the support for different languages like C#, JavaScript, and different languages are there. And here we have the versions here for that Azure versions are there, the functions like 1, 2, and 3. These are there. But there is one limitation here that so far that I have faced, and I just want to check with you guys if you are able to do that. Currently, if you want to write that Azure function for and utilize the dynamics with the dynamics, you have to write that Azure function in the Azure version 1. You cannot use that upper versions because they support this .NET Core, and right now we don't support .NET Core in Dynamics, right? So this is the one thing that is currently there, but I'm sure that very soon we will be getting support for the .NET Core, and we will be able to utilize those as well. Is there anybody who want to share experience?
Yeah, I think it's not just .NET Core. I think even .NET Framework, it supports till 4. I think 4.7.
6.2.
Yeah, 6.2 maybe. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, not even 7. Right. So yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I want to share one experience here. Recently we were, like some time back, we were working on that Azure function, and we were getting some. We had older, Azure function that we built on the Azure function version 1, and then we started getting some, limitation here. So because there are limitation as well in the Azure function depending on the time. So what we decided that time, that we will be that time I was not aware of this .NET Core, but I just want to share that experience, and we decided to use that this Azure function 2, and we used the same thing. And that time I was not using the Visual Studio. Okay, so I was writing my code over there in the Azure portal directly. So I was just testing there, and then I faced issue on the service.model. So there is a service.model that is utilized while you are connecting with the dynamic CRM, and we started facing a issue there that it's not supported. And we reached out to Microsoft, and there first I tried to look for that if there is any solution for that, and I found that there is some issue with the service.model. And then we reached about that to Microsoft support regarding that, and they said that no, there is no issue, we can do that. But they tried hard, but they were not able to do that. So then we start keeping you start kept using this Azure function 1 only, so we were not able to upgrade it. Okay, so that kind of limitation that faced while working with this Azure Function 2.0 based on the service.model. Now the plans, like I'm not an expert on the pricing part here, but I'm going to share what based on my experience, that when working with that Azure, what the things we noticed here. So the first thing that is there is the consumption plan. Okay, so which is basically has that default when you start working with the Azure function. That is the first thing that you select, and it has like it comes kind of like if you are using the free subscription, you can use it, and it has its limitation like based on the resources that you are using. And apart from that, which is very important here is the default timeout. Okay, so by default, if there is nothing and you are writing your Azure function and you are running it, there is a default timeout of 5 minutes. If your job is running more than 5 minutes, it will time out. Okay, I'm talking about the consumption plan. So to extend this capability, there is a host file there. You need to mention that you want to keep it for the 10 minutes, and then that is the maximum time that you can utilize for the consumption plan to run your logic, right? So but still it's better, like from 2 minutes to 10 minutes. So you got some couple of more minutes to execute your logic, and that can be utilized here on the consumption plan. So anybody here which is anybody using the consumption plan and they face that 10-minute timeout limit, and they did something and they were able to resolve it, like narrow down or come down that some couple of minutes to finish their jobs before the 10 minutes? Is there anyone who want to share his experience?
So we had a requirement where we needed even some tasks which needed to be executed even more than 10 minutes. It was a time-taking process. So which we needed to attend. So we had to go with a different plan altogether, and we have to create a different app for that and host the function up there.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else want to share his experience? Come on, there is no nothing like bad or good solution. That's everybody have their experience. So whatever we have, these called we call it experience. Nothing is good or bad. So whenever we are doing, like we try to do whatever best we can do. So Let's share if you have any story that you want to share and you're working on this, and how you resolve that 10-minute.
Okay, Mahinder, Vivek here. So generally,
Hi,
when
Vivek.
I work with, hi, whenever we work with integrations,
Mm-hmm.
it, there is a see, there are two things when we go for integration.
Mm-hmm.
Either it is real time or it is a schedule base.
Yep.
Okay. Now the challenge of timeout may occur majorly when it is a real time integration. Okay. When it comes to a schedule base, I don't think it might take that much of time, because when it comes to a schedule base, we might not be doing into dynamics anything. We might be using schedulers, and generally what we have used, we have always used the schedulers, the Windows schedulers, which are nodes, and that runs on the servers itself. And that is a kind of .NET part. So they don't have that kind of feature that it will get expired within 5 minutes, 10 minutes job, right? So we
Okay.
use that kind of thing for applications and processing the data or transferring the data.
Okay. So here you're saying that you use some on-prem system to do that, logic processing or the data processing,
Even
whatever.
even even if,
Mm-hmm.
even if it is on-prem or even if it is online,
Mm-hmm.
through on-prem, like one of the systems where we generally go with is the Navision integration with Dynamics 365 Online,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
Navision is the quite old version where they don't have web APIs, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't know to expose also, like certain versions they have the APIs, but they don't know to expose it out of their applications.
Mm-hmm.
So that time generally we do this kind of scheduler things, and we place that scheduler onto their virtual machines or their servers, and from there only we run. So
Yeah.
when it
So.
comes to a longer, like of
Mm-hmm.
even that times,
Yeah.
we haven't seen any issue uh, this.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing your experience. And yes, like I said that depending on the resources, you can have different solution for your problem. So here I'm if is there anybody who want to share experience with the Azure function they used, and they earlier they faced the issue on that. So like for example, I have one story here. Like earlier, while working on one of the requirement, I there was we need to process lots of data on that, and when we started initially working on that, we were hitting that this timeout limit. First we hit that 5 minute, and then we hit that 10 minutes as well, like depending on that, because we when we we crossed that 5 minute limit, and then there was another requirement that was added to there, and then sooner we also crossed that 10-minute limit. And but there we use that utilize that execute multiple, and that execute multiple little bit did it faster, and then we were able to save a couple of minutes. But still, sometime when they have loads of whole data that we need to process, it's again going beyond the 10 minute. Okay, so then we have to go for the higher plan, like the premium plan that we have, where we don't have this kind of conditions. Okay, so that's there. So the another thing that we have, the app service plan, which is not the basically for that Azure function side. It's basically you are already using that app service for your other Azure resources like the Azure VMs or anything else, and you want to utilize those app service plan for your Azure function. There you will be, it's kind of higher limit on that, then you are not using the consumption plan, and there is no limit on the timings, right? And apart from that, you also can use the durable functions that is there, which can run on the intern, so you can do that thing. So that is another option that I never used it, but I know that they have that option as well, but that can be used based on the requirement. Okay, so there is, if you want to utilize, like want to see that how it is calculated, so there is very good article on that Azure pricing, how it is calculated. So you can see that there are free you know runs are there for every Azure functions, for depending on that plan that you are using. So this is basically the consumption plan, so you can utilize that for your learning purpose, or whenever you have the less number of data that you can use. So that options are available in that Azure plan as well. Okay, so Now, the very important part is that authentication, right? So when we start working, with that, the things which is out of the CRM, then we need to somehow authenticate that, when we want to get data from CRM, right? So we want to access a CRM service. So that's the one thing that, we need to do. So there is a traditional way that we use, that everybody use, that they use the password and username and password, and that's a traditional way where they can connect to that CRM service, and they can get that. And you need to also mention here, this is also very important. If you won't mention, after 10 minutes this will be kind of timeout, so you need to specifically mention here the time of spam here which you want to use. If you are working with that CRM service, you are connecting outside the CRM. Okay, so this is that traditional way, but the demerit is here that you need to use the user and password, and sometimes the password will be changed and that integration will stop, and you will suddenly get that integration is not working, and then you will troubleshoot and find out that this the password is expired, right? So those kind of things are there, which is and the next thing that we have nowadays, that we use that access key, okay, where you don't need to use any kind of username and password. You need that access key, so you create that app user, and that app user, when you do that in that Azure portal, you get that access key, and through that access key you can just get connected with that dynamic CRM, and you get the token and you are connected with that, and you can perform your operations, right? So these are the options that we have for the authentication. So before jumping to the demo, is there any question?
How do we give the access to CRM to that app, the app that we create?
Yeah, I will show you in the demo. I will give you, on demo that I will cover. I will show you.
So, between the two methods of authentication that we touched on, between those two, let's say if we have access to the access key option, would you say it's always preferable to do that instead of
Yeah.
the?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So no more questions. So let's jump into the demo. So I'm going to show you the demo. I'll just give you a quick second here. I need to see how to come out of this here. Sorry. Okay, so let's I have some scenario that I want to show you here. The first scenario that here is, I will show you that one webhook that I have created. So this basically, this is a very simple scenarios, and I have created this solution. These are very solution, not a rocket based science, but just to demonstrate that I have created it. So this is a webhook that I have created. Okay, so for example, if you will start, when you will start creating that Azure solution, so let me show you that first thing. So you can select that Azure function here. So when you will say okay, after that you have that option that where you can select the which trigger that you want to write, right? Okay, so the one option that I'm talking about, this HTTP trigger, that is a webhook that I have created here. So this basically here, that this will be triggered from that Azure, this will be deployed in the Azure, and we will be triggering it from that CRM function, plugin. So what I'm doing here is basically I have written a webhook which should trigger on the event which I will configure on the plugin registration. But what I'm doing here, I'm getting that reading that data which is coming into the JSON, and through that I'm getting that remote execution context, and from there I'm getting that context of the plugin, and I have that service method which I'm connecting to that CRM service here, and then from that context I'm getting that event, the entity of I'm using the event entity, custom entity here. I'm using that and I'm just simply generating a random number to that event number. So that's what I'm doing, and simply I'm just passing a true or false. If it's if all the data, whatever changes I want to done, it's done, then I'm returning false, otherwise it's returning true, right? So based on that it will trigger, and I have deployed it on that Azure. I will show you when I will deploy the another solution how to deploy that, but I want to show you here. So I have created a resource group, and under that resource group that is there here, so this is that webhook that I have created. This is already created, that's why I'm just showing you, and then I will show you how to create it. So we have one function here. When you click on that, here is the thing that you need. So this is basically the URL of your webhook, and this is you required while registering your plugin. Okay, so you need that basically if you select it, you just copy it here. So this is the things that we have, that Azure webhook URL and then the key that is required. So while registering the plugin, so here you can register your plugin on that, you can select this webhook here, and then here you can mention whatever name that you want to give, and here you can give that URL till this before the question mark sign, and under the key here you can select the webhook key and you can paste this key that is after the question mark, after that this code, after the code equal to, so you need to use this key and then you need to provide it here, and then later on you can just bound it to the step. So for example here it is, so this is I have bound with that create event just like we do in the plugins. Okay, so this will run on the create event for my entity, and then I have selected like how I want to run it on async or sync options. Okay, so for example here if I go to, so I'm just saving it. So this will trigger that webhook and it will generate that number for me, and it will take a couple of seconds to get that number, and then it will update that number here. Okay, so it will get that number from here. So, and here you can also, if you want to see that, you can also monitor here. So we have different way that you can use that insight as well, or you can simply use that switch to the classic view, and it will show you that how many runs it has done, and if there is any issue it will get that logs for you, so you can check that what is the issue that in your webhook here. Okay, so these are the logs available which we can see. Now let's get started here. I'm going to show you another thing which I'm going to build here. Let's build a scheduler, and I will show you how we can build it from the scratch and how we can debug it. Okay, so I'm going to build a scheduler, let's say. The first thing that you need to do is like you can add that assembly references. So I'm going to add that assemblies that is required here. done it. It's already done.
Hey, Mahinder, we have a question.
Yeah, please
So,
go ahead.
how can we get the created records from the create message which is passed to Azure function?
Can you come again, please?
Yeah, sure. How can we get the created record from the create message which is passed to Azure function?
So for example, Azure function created some record, right? And we want to get them.
Hey, can you please
Yeah,
unmute
can
your
you please?
mic?
Yeah, I'm not getting the question clearly. Yeah, can you please try explain me what's the requirement here?
Hey, Nugent, can you please unmute your mic and explain
Yeah.
the issue?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so the event record is created in CRM. So we create a webhook event that pass the record into the Azure function. So in the Azure function, how can we get the record from CRM?
Okay, yeah. Well, you are so for example, here it is. So here, like we are getting this record, right? So this is like same thing like we have in the plugin. So whenever the plugin capture the same thing, so we are getting the plugin context, and through that we get that entity. So this is that entity record where our webhook is running, and our record is created in CRM. So we will get it from here. So for example, I'm getting this ID, ID of the record created. Okay.
Okay, yes, thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Mahinder, I have one question here.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so if you register your Azure function through Dynamics webhooks, what we faced that it is encountering a 2-minute timeout issue still, because actually it is waiting for the response, and in the meantime, if Azure function doesn't execute
So
within 2 minutes time, so it is again we are getting the same error.
no, I got your question here, but you know that I will say that when in a traditional way we say that plugin have the limit of 2 minutes, but you know that there are the plugins which don't have the 2-minute timeout limit. You know that?
No, please, can you please explain?
All that Azure function, all the Azure plugin that you write that don't come under the 2-minute timeout limit. Whatever plugin that you run for, Azure, like Azure
Okay.
plugin that you run for Dynamics, that don't come under that 2-minute timeout limit.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah. So here we added that assembly reference, and I'm going to sorry. Is there any other question? Please go ahead. Keep on asking questions.
Do we know why that 2-minute difference is not there when it comes to Azure?
Well, that I don't
Do
know.
you? Okay.
That's Microsoft has provided that you want to run the long running job, so you can utilize that Azure, right? And you can pass your data there, and it will it won't have that kind of limit.
Okay. No, I was just curious if you knew why the difference was
I
there.
don't have that information. Sorry.
No problem.
So one
Hey,
more debate
Mahinder,
here.
can you please minimize the recording pop-up? I think someone is having some issue with that. Okay, and we have a question. Can webhook used in on-prem CRM?
Well, yes, we can use it anywhere. But as I said, like in on-prem, we don't get that much thing because we have that as per my knowledge that we have that workaround that we can increase the timeout to some limit while we are working with the on-prem environment. And these specifically the 2-minute timeout limit, when they are saying that we cannot do anything about that comes in the category of sandbox plugin. Okay, so it's not responding. I'm not sure why it's not responding what I did. Okay, anyway, just give me a couple of minutes here. Okay, by the time it's doing that, let me jump into the Azure portal, and I will show you how we register our app. So what we need to do, we need to go to the first thing that we want to do, we need to go to that Azure Active Directory, And here we have that option for app registration, and we go there and we create that new registration. So for example, I have created it. So for example, if I say and I create a new registration, and let's say I say example register, and under that we have that option that which we can do here, that we need to create that our secret. Okay, and here you need to click on the new create secret, and there you can say that expire, and you can say never expire and add it. And as soon as it is created, you will get this key, and you have to copy it quickly, because once you refresh it, it will go. Okay, so this key is that what I was referring as the access key, which we need to use in the our code, right? Now, but this is one thing, like we just created the app, but how to relate it with the CRM? Okay, so what we need to do here, when we create that, it has that app ID that we get from here. And in CRM, what we need to do, we need to go to the users, and we need to create a user, app type of user. So if you will go here, you will change this to app user, and here you can create new user, and there we need to use the keys. So for example, I'm saying test, and here we need to use this application. You see that application ID? Here we need to use this ID, and you can use this ID and use it. And once that user is created, you can assign that security role to this user, and that's the user which we will be going from there. So from you can enter that other details and you can create it. Okay, so I'm not going to create it. So currently I have created
Does
the user I'm using. So this is
mind
the
a
user.
quick question?
Yes, please.
Does that app user, does it consume a license?
No.
Okay.
That's the beauty of this. Yeah, that's the beauty of this. It won't consume any kind of license from CRM. That's the beauty of this. Okay.
I have one question. Hello.
Let me try another one. This one.
Hey, Mahinder, we have another question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Vivek, your voice is fading a little bit. Can you please speak up a little loud?
Okay. Is it fine now?
Yeah, I think it's good now.
Okay. So, can we associate images like we used to do in this web?
See, whatever we can do on the plugin, that we can use it, we can register that, and that will go, because we are getting the context right there, and through that context we can get, so the plugin images can be also, we can get it from there. Yes, because we are getting that context. Yeah. Okay, so let me try again. Something happened, it was not working there. Let me try again now. I'm quickly trying to do it. But if you guys have any questions, just keep asking. Okay, so I'm going to add another one which we required here. Okay, we are done. Now I'm going to add some other assembly which is required. Okay, I'm going to add one other system.configuration here. Okay, so these are the required assemblies that I have added here. I'm now going to quickly add one class here, which is just, I'm going to get a, let's say, CRM helper. So I'm just quickly trying to write it. Okay, so here I have that quick code that I have already written. I'm just going to show you here that how it will be. So I'm going to take it as it is there, I just want to show you that how to deploy it, and then I will run and I will show you that how it can, uh, run it from CRM. Okay. So I'm going to
Um,
add quickly here.
hey, Mahinder, just wanted to give you a quick time check as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I won't take much time. Maybe I will be taking just 2 minutes or
Yeah,
something. Sure.
please
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. I'm sure I will be writing quickly, so it's just ready. I just want to show you how to debug it. That's it. Okay, so we have that reference here added. So I just want to show here. Okay, so this is done. Let's say, for example, if I build it, let's say this is done. Okay, so we are ready, and we called our this class method there in that here. So what I'm doing here, just to give you a quick overview here. So I have let's say I'm getting some data from CRM, I'm querying some data, and let's say I want to send that email to some of that events which is not confirmed to the customers, that please confirm your event, it is not confirmed, right? So basically we are getting the data and I'm executing a workflow for sending that email. Okay, so you see here we have the configuration that we are using here. I will show you how we can do that. So let's take an example that this our code is ready, and how to deploy it. We can right click and build it, and then we have the publish. There we can create when we need to create a profile for that Azure. So you need to connect with your Azure subscription, and you will get a app name here. You can change it whatever app name you want to give to your function. You will get a subscription here depending on that. For example, I'm using the free trial, but depending on that you will get the options here. Resource group, by default it's showing us that there is an existing resource group, so it's using that. But if you want to create, you can click on new and you can enter the data. It will create the new resource group. Okay, so whatever you want to give, so you can give it. Okay, so and similarly here we have that hosting plan. So this is the consumption plan. Okay, that y1, that is that you can identify that this is a consumption plan. And then storage account, if you want to create your own, you can click on new and give it a new name, otherwise it will create, and you will simply say create. And when you will create it, it will connect to your Azure portal, and it will create that web resource, the source group for you, and it will create that storage account there, and then you can publish it there. Okay, so by the time it's doing that, let me quickly jump and show you that when we are working with that function, so we can, so this is that Azure function that we have here. And when you will go there, you will see that we have option to use the configuration. Okay, so here is the configuration that you can store. So you can store all of your CRM URL or the client key, so that you don't need to change it when you are deploying your solution for some other customer, right? So you can just use this specific for this, and these will be utilized by your function while it's on the runtime, right? So once it is done, it will come here, and from there you can just click on the publish, and then your function will be actually published under the resource group that you have created. Okay, so it's running here, and now I have that same thing here I have already created, just to quickly, so that we have the less time. So it's still publishing it. I'm going to show you that how we can quickly run it. So one important point that you need to keep in mind whenever you are working with the Azure function and you want to debug it or troubleshoot it locally, you need to make sure that you need to keep all of your settings here. Okay, so that when you are running or debugging your you know Azure function locally, so it can refer those details here, right? So I can simply run it, and I can debug it. Okay, what is that? Seems some issue. Okay, what happened to that? I'm not sure what is the issue here, but let me see if it will hit it. So this way it will run and it will hit that breakpoint, but something has, hold on, let me try. I'm not sure what is going on. Maybe this is still going on. Okay. Let me try this. Yeah.
Sure, Mahendra. Just second time check here. So we're just 5 minutes
Yeah.
past.
Yes. Just for a second. I'll just
Yep.
quickly check this. Okay, so this way it will hit that, and then if you want to debug it, you can debug it. And one important thing that I want to tell you here, that what we are using is basically that we are using this Azure scheduler. So you need to keep this as well true here if you want that run it here. So on the first run you want to try it, so you can simply try it. So this is like, okay, in between, if you have any questions, so you can just hit. Okay, I'm not sure why it's not going, or maybe it's still waiting. I think it's a 5 minute only. It should go here. But anyway, is there any questions?
Yes, Mahendra. We have a few questions here.
Yeah,
One
please,
of which
please.
is where can we see logs?
Yeah, we can see the logs on the Azure portal here. So if you will go here in the Azure portal, so in this function we have that here. So for example, I want to see the log for here. So you can open your function here, and then we have the monitor. It will show you the logs here. Okay, so we hit that. So from here, see, you can keep simply debugging your, just like we do that. Okay.
Yep.
So
I hope that answers the
yeah,
question, Shailesh.
here is the logs. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have another.
Yes. I just wanted to see like where we can see the details of the logs. Yeah, fine.
Thank you. We have another question here, which says, "What are Azure durable functions?" And Mahendra, I would just give you one more time check. So we're closing at 7:10.
Yeah, so I have finished myself, like but I can keep on just speaking for a couple of minutes. If you want to change and take over that, I will keep myself unmuted, so you can just share the slide, or etc. So basically the we can durable function is like when we want to call different methods on the sequence. So I have not personally used it, but there is a way, like you can say that it's kind of like one function will complete only, then I want to go to the next function. So that kind of thing that we can do in the Azure functions. Okay, so you can get that more detail on that Azure website, the document library on that Microsoft Azure. Yeah. Anything else?
Um, I think that was the last one.
Okay.
Thank you, Mahinder, so much for such an insightful session. I never knew we could do so much with